Victory is ours, people. I repeat, victory is ours. Bring us all the finest bagels and coffee in the land, because we won a game. That is right, folks. Vegas Golden Knights win preseason game number 3 by a lopsided score of 7-1 against the reigning Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. This game was entirely unexpected given the way that the Knights matched up against the Colorado Avalanche just 4 days ago in preseason game number 1. But it doesn't take away from the fact that 7 goals is a lot of goals, and 1 goal is not as many as 7. So it was a very solid win for the Knights, and there's a lot to unpack. The Golden Knights continue to diversify their NHL starters in the lineup for this third preseason game, starting with a lineup of Cotter, Stevenson, and Kolesar, Howden, Carlson, and Amadio, Slesizhin, Brabanek, and Ronbjerg, Quinney, Morozov, Brisson, and Cormier, Whitecloud, Hutton, Korzak, and Bischoff and Pahal, with the goaltending matchup being Logan Thompson versus Alexander Georgiev. So you can see the roster starting to shape up, and the eagle-eyed viewer would note that this is Cotter, Lesizhin, and Ronbjerg's third straight preseason game, third in 4 days. And so clearly management wants to get a look at those players in particular, and given that I'm a very invested viewer, I also wanted to see what they had to give tonight. That being said, we dropped the puck on the opening period, and boy, did it not take long for the Golden Knights to pick up where they were hoping they would start, as William Karlsson took a shot pass from Zach Whitecloud from the point that was going to go about 40 feet right of the net, and he tipped it just up and over the glove of Alexander Georgiev, and in. First shot of the game by either side winds up being a goal for. And William Karlsson getting a goal was a really good feeling, given that he really struggled for offense last year. I know it's a preseason game, and we know that Colorado's not at full strength, but that is supposed to be their day-to-day starter in Alexander Georgiev. So, hey, a goal is a goal. It was Karlsson from Whitecloud and Cormier at 53 seconds of the first period. And that's a really good start for anybody to get off to, and let alone that the Golden Knights had trouble with starting the last couple of preseason games. It's just another good step in the right direction towards a strong opening night and strong season. The momentum built by that goal never really let up, as Myers was caught for hooking at 2:41 of the first period, putting the Golden Knights on the power play. And it was a very, very effective power play at that. A great tip from Paul Cotter in the slot led to a really good chance, and Amadio had an equally great chance to score on the rebound early on that power play. Stevenson and Karlsson had a really, really, really solid tic-tac-toe setup that almost let Amadio pot another great opportunity. The second power play unit on this one wasn't quite as effective as the first without landing a shot, but the power play did record 2 shots in the first minute of the power play, so clearly there was a lot going on. Then the game after that power play for the Golden Knights kind of hit a lull. There wasn't a lot going on, and so I kind of tuned the game out for a second and worked on my notes for this. And it wasn't 30 seconds after looking up that I realized that Gage Quinney had just absolutely blown the doors off the building, scoring the second goal of the game. Watching it back, it was the Golden Knights' first shot in 7 minutes, and it was on an absolutely horrific turnover by Colorado Avalanche defenseman Spencer Smallman. Oh my God, it was horrible. I mean, obviously turnovers are bad, and that doesn't necessarily mean there was going to be a goal, but Quinney absolutely beat Georgiev over the glove, top corner of the net. Just, it wasn't even close. It was unassisted at 10:26 of the first period. So another great start, jumping out to a 2-0 lead. We were finally able to get that second goal in a game, given that we'd scored 1 goal and 1 goal in the 2 prior preseason games. So clearly there was some pent-up aggression, especially against the Colorado Avalanche. And in this first period, it seems like we were taking it out in the best possible way, given that the Avalanche had barely done anything at that point. That being said, they were able to finally get a couple of things going towards the end of the first period. The Golden Knights got stuck in the defensive zones, but the thing that I find interesting and that I've been picking up on all preseason is that none of the opposition, particularly the Avalanche in this game, are able to get to the interior of the offensive zone. They're being kept outside the dots or wide-angle shots from the point, which is essentially the easiest you can look for if you're Logan Thompson. And if you're Bruce Cassidy, clearly your defensive team is working, because there were numerous instances at the end of this first period where the Avs could have had a good opportunity, but were never able to get the puck into the middle. This was all around 4 minutes to go in the period, and it was all kind of kicked off by a couple of shaky turnovers by Golden Knights defensemen. Primarily, White Cloud made a couple of shaky plays, and Hutton wasn't quite looking his usual self. But again, it's the preseason; we can't really hold it against him, and those are NHL regulars anyway, so I can't really hold it against him very much. Basically, this foray into the offensive zone for the Avs, almost to some extent, I could almost say that the coaches told the Knights defenders to just back it off a little bit, because at that point, Logan Thompson had barely done anything, and he had to make a couple of busy saves there at the end of that period. I think he made like 6 of them in the last 5 minutes of the game, or last 5 minutes of the period. So clearly, Thompson was on the ball today, and basically there was nothing going on. So the first period winds to an end with the Golden Knights leading 2-0. The defensive structure got a little sloppy after the second goal, but was bailed out by good goaltending and overall good strategy and scheming. The Golden Knights were getting outshot 8-5 by the Colorado Avalanche, but let in blocks 6-0 and were about 87% from the faceoff dot, which is the most lopsided number I think I've ever seen through 20 minutes of a faceoff battle. The thing that we can note from this first period is that the Golden Knights clearly prioritized quality over quantity, given that they scored on 2 of their 5 total shots of the period. All in all, very solid period, and like I've said every time so far, the Golden Knights clearly were hoping to build on it and go strong into the second period with that same kind of aggression. And start with a bit of aggression, the Golden Knights did with the second period. It wasn't long before they were immediately put back on the man advantage for the second time in the game, as Maltsev was caught for holding the stick 43 seconds into the period. This was primarily because the Knights were way faster. They were 2 steps ahead of the Avs the whole game to that point, and so holding the stick was really the only way to slow them down. Unfortunately, this power play didn't last very long, as primarily we lost the face-off, which was cleared. And then on an attempt to re-enter the zone, Cotter got caught for interference at 57 seconds of the second period. And really, there was nothing you could do, and that just wiped away everything. So at 4-on-4, the Golden Knights have been very good at 4-on-4 all preseason, and this 4-on-4 wasn't an exception to that. It was very, very bland for the Avalanche. They weren't really able to do anything, and the Knights weren't really able to do much either. That was until the tail end of the 4-on-4 when White Cloud absolutely went short side, and it would have gone shelf if it had been about 2 more inches to the right. But it hit the scary side of the post and kicked out. The Avs were able to clear it out. But right as the penalty to Paul Cotter expired and we went back to 5-on-5, Zach Whitecloud made a good long stretch pass up to William Karlsson, who slowly walked into the zone from the right boards into the middle and fired a low shot off of Georgiev's left pad, which Amadio came flying down the wing, collected, and potted for the 3rd goal of the game. Given that was a very, very smart play by 3 NHL regulars for the Knights last season. And it was one of those plays where it just made me smile, because clearly hockey is back in Vegas and our players are ready as ever to get going. It was Amadio from Karlsson and Whitecloud, which Whitecloud recording his 2nd assist of the game at 2:05 of the second period. This really kind of kept going. This theme, this aggression, this good scoring chances was kind of the MO for the Golden Knights in the second period. A few minutes later, there was a good chance for Brabanet's to Lecision, almost paid off after an extended time period in the zone. This was about 7 minutes into the second period, and it was really the first time that a non-regular player made a standout play since Quinney's goal in the first period. And Brabanet's, despite being kind of invisible through part of the game, wasn't doing anything wrong, and his pass to Lecision was almost a highlight reel move. Unfortunately, the highlight reel move for the Golden Knights would be taken away just a few minutes after this play, as Paul Cotter would take an incredible shot pass from Braden Pahal from the point and just tip it. He beat his man to the middle of the ice he beat Brad Hunt, former Golden Knight, to the middle of the ice, got his stick down where Pahal could see it, and he just fired it from the point right off the stick and right into the back of the net, making it 4-0 Golden Knights. Really, if we could give Pahal the goal, we would, because he did the more talented thing. It was just the most perfect pass, and it was another one of those goals, like the first one of the second period, that made me really excited for what we've got in the system, as Pahal is a strong defenseman, and Cotter clearly thinks that he can make the NHL roster at the start of this season. Given that this is Cotter's 2nd goal of the preseason, assisted from Pahal and Whitecloud, his 3rd assist of this game so far. We've been off and running. It's 4-0. We can kind of pack it in as the Golden Knights. You're not giving up a 4-goal lead at home in the preseason with your 1A goaltender in net. That's just not what's going to happen. So one would think that the Golden Knights are just going to pack it in and move on with the night. Not get any injuries, not really do anything nuts, and just try and bring it home 4-0. That was apparently until Michael Amadio got a partial breakaway off the faceoff and almost made it, and then Howden got a rebound chance and also almost scored. So clearly there's some fire under the Golden Knights to get a couple of other goals in the second period. And heck, I'm not going to complain. I really thought they were going to pack it in, but clearly Bruce Cassidy wants to see what everybody's got. And clearly people are fighting for jobs, and points in the preseason matter. And so I'm not going to complain. It makes for good hockey. One of the lines that was really, really quiet over the course of this game up until the middle of the second period was the line including Brendan Brisson and Ivan Morozov. I've really been up about them, thinking that they're going to be really strong players over the course of the entire offseason, almost penciling one of those two into the NHL opening night roster. And so it was kind of odd over the last couple of games to not see them do very much. And up until the point in this game, they had been kind of invisible. That was until they finally did something. They had a really solid passing play on a kind of partial 2-on-2. While it wasn't like a prime scoring opportunity, this was about 8 minutes to go in the period. It was still a very strong opportunity for two players who are still trying to adjust to NHL speed, one coming over to America for the first time and one who had only played a couple of games in Henderson last season, to kind of get up to speed against a strong team in Colorado and in the Fortress, where I'm sure both of them hope to play at least more than once this season. Unfortunately for Brendan Brisson and Ivan Morozov, the next goal would fall to one of my personal favorite players, and I really wish I could have the opportunity to meet the guy because he seems super cool, Keegan Colasar. He's one of those players who I always think is a little bit better than everybody's given him credit for, and on this play, he kind of proved it. He did get the mother of all assists, though, from Paul Cotter. He got dumped behind the net and originally turned the puck over, but then on the half wall, he decided to masterfully place his stick in a passing lane, which kicked the puck immediately onto the tape of Keegan Colasar, who walked it across the slot, outweighted Georgiev, and just slid it right through him. Just a very mature play from a player who I still consider to be very young by Golden Knights standards. So if Keegan Colasar is able to do that during the regular season, that's going to be a whale to play against as a fourth-line player, as that seems to be Keegan Colasar's slot on this team. And that was Colasar from Cotter at 13:30 of the second period. Finally, the Golden Knights make a mistake. It doesn't wind up in the back of the net, but they make a mistake. Keegan Colasar gets caught for hooking at 16:06. It's never fun when your name shows up on the score sheet twice in a row, and especially one is a goal and one is a penalty. But it wound up not costing the Golden Knights in the end, as the Colorado Avalanche were literally able to do nothing but perimeter shots, and Thompson is just too good for that. He is too experienced with NHL shots, and everything was hitting him right in the insignia or right on the legs anyway, so there wasn't really any chance. Okay, now it's 5-0. Now the Golden Knights are going to slow it down. Well, clearly nobody told Caden Korzak that, because he decided in the last minute of the period to just make it 6-0, just because why not? It'd be rude to leave the fans in their seats for the remainder of the period. So he decides to take a pass from the middle of the ice, walk it into the high slot above the left circle, and shoot through a screen provided by Keegan Colasar underneath the blocker of Georgiev, and just put it in. The original pass was set up on really good vision by Quinney from below the dot to feed it up to Korzak, up in a scoring opportunity, and then it was just a good shot. So the scoreline being Korzak from Quinney and Colasar at 19:07. Okay, now the scoring fest is over. Now the Golden Knights are going to take a break, and mercifully for this second period, they did cool off. There were so many good opportunities and so many goals in that period. It's no wonder that the Knights were out shooting the Avalanche by the total of 18-15 at this point. One of the factors that I think is important to consider is they were still 73% from the dot now for the game, with 10 total blocks in the game. And if you do a little bit of back of the napkin math, they're scoring on one out of every 3 shots through 2 periods. This period really gave the coaches and managers and GMs a lot of chances to see what kind of skills these players have, as there was just so many offensive zone moments where every player on every line really had an opportunity to do something that would get them looked at. We let Colorado open up a little bit at the end of the second, whether it be through the penalty we took or whether it just be kind of a defensive breakdown because it is, 5-0, 6-0. So that's something the coaching staff is probably going to look at. So they might just want to be careful of that going into the third period. And with the start of the third period comes a new challenger in net for the Colorado Avalanche. It was originally purported that Alexander Georgiev was going to go the distance, similar to how Logan Thompson was slated to go the distance. Yet after you give up 6 goals on 18 shots in 2 periods to a team you're supposed to do well against, you're going to get yanked out of that game. So that's exactly what happened. The Avalanche coach pulls Georgiev in an attempt to, save whatever kind of confidence he has left after giving up 6, and puts in Jonas Johansson, who we saw in the first preseason game, the back half of that first preseason game 4 nights ago. And it seemed to kind of spark something underneath the Avalanche because they were actually kind of able to do something. It started off early in the first couple of minutes of the period. The Golden Knights up 6-0. It's not really something you've got to worry about. And you can get a little sloppy, and that's kind of what happened. That was basically, they made a mistake. They got a little sloppy in their defensive zone, and I don't want to blame it on Logan Thompson, but he kind of messed up a rebound control, and there were a couple of sloppy passes that resulted in Alex Bocage scoring for the Colorado Avalanche, making it 6-1. This breaks Thompson's preseason-long shutout streak. He made it through half of a game in that second. He made it through half the game the other night, and then through 2 periods plus 5 minutes of this one. So on the aggregate, he got a whole shutout. So I can't complain. He looked solid, and I don't blame him on this goal. I blame the fact that it was a 6-0 hockey game, which the scoreline reading Bocage from Sample and Myers at 4:47. One of the things that made me a little bit worried was what happened a couple of minutes later. There was a scuffle in front of the net in which Jake Bischoff kind of dumped a Colorado player whose stick kind of rode up Thompson's shoulder and caught him in the neck. And neck is not something you want to have hit with a hockey stick at great speed, and he wasn't exactly gently pushed into him. So that kind of brought the game to a halt for a little bit, and unfortunately Bischoff took a penalty for cross-checking at 6:37. Fortunately, Thompson was able to stay in the game, and primarily another point of consideration was on that power play, the Avs were able to do basically nothing. Again, they had 2 total shots, one of which was a perimeter shot from the point, which Thompson saw literally all 90 feet of. And then another one, which was a rather decent scoring opportunity, which Thompson had to play through a screen. So clearly, whatever hit him in the neck wasn't bothering him, as he really locked it down for the remainder of that period. There was a really, really good chance on a wraparound about 12 minutes later, because the middle of the third period was just chip and chase, a lot of changes. A couple of decent-sized hits, as there was like 60 hits or something in this game total. So the game kind of got physical, as most blowouts do. And the Knights were just taking their time, making sure that everybody got to touch the puck. They were trying to set up some passing plays and trying to build chemistry. They stuck with the lines the whole time, but as the game progressed, Lucas Cormier started to get a lot more ice time on the back end, and so did Korzak, which was always good. They had a lot of time to talk about on the broadcast, bios of players, how White Cloud is the new Nick Holden, whereas what White Cloud was to Holden, now Cormier is to White Cloud, being student and mentor. And I find those things really interesting, the player backstories, the human side of hockey, especially with a player who I wouldn't be surprised, given the way he's played this preseason, if he doesn't play at least 5 games in the NHL this year, being that he is a junior hockey star, and if he doesn't put up stupid numbers in the American Hockey League this year, it'll only be because he spent more time with the Vegas Golden Knights. So, hey, I'll take it. So there was a really good chance late in the game, about 6 minutes to go, whereas Lecision got a strong, basically power move behind the back of the net, almost potted it home on a wraparound, and then Brabanec was there to try and tap home the rebound on said wraparound, and was bailed out, and the Avs were bailed out by a good leg save by Johansson. Finally, The Golden Knights were able to do something offensively that didn't result in a save, as Chandler Stevenson put the Golden Knights up 7-1. He was an accidental goal, let's be real. He was trying to hit Howden with a cross-crease feed, and it just so happened to hit Colorado defenseman McDonald in the net when he was in the crease and just go up and over and in. It was one of those funny goals where you only ever see those in blowout games, and Stevenson was able to benefit from it, which is nice given that it's his first game of the preseason. So all in all, it was a happy accident for the forward. The stat line reading: Stevenson from Whitecloud, his 4th assist of the game, and Cormier, his 2nd assist of the game at 14:49 of the 3rd period. And then the game just kind of slowed down. There wasn't a lot going on. The Avalanche knew the game was over. They couldn't get physical because they were getting beat. They didn't have the size advantage. None of their younger players were playing well, and all of our younger players were playing well. The Knights made a lot of smart puck decisions, smart passes, and just played really good shutdown hockey, barely giving up any shots over the remainder of the game. It was going to be a very easy finish until Pahal took a hooking minor at 19:02. Again, the Avalanche weren't able to do anything on the 58 seconds of power play they got, landing a shot, and there was nothing but clears. The defenseman really shut it down, so can't really fault anyone, and brought us home to a final of 7-1. Holy moly, it was lopsided. And I didn't even realize how historic this game was for the Golden Knights. This game became the single highest scoring preseason game in franchise history, with 7 goals by 7 goal scorers. That just shows the depth that we had going. Again, 6 of these goals were against the goalie who Colorado believes to be their opening night starter. Now, if you're the GM of Colorado Avalanche, you've got to be a little concerned because you haven't seen Pavel Francouz very much this offseason. And apparently the only goalie who can shut down Vegas right now is Jonas Johansson, who is your 4th string goalie. So I'm not sure if I'd be alarmed if I was Joe Sakic, but that being said, I don't care about the Avalanche. I'm a Knights fan, so I'm going to revel in the fact that I got to watch a historic preseason game. A couple of standout players for this game. As I've mentioned before, Lucas Cormier, very, very solid. He looked great. 2 assists. Even though he didn't score, he didn't make any poor decisions. He just looked solid. He looked like a good two-way defenseman. And on that pairing with Zach Whitecloud, he was on fire. Maybe it's because, they've lived together for the last couple of weeks during rookie camp and through training camp. They must have picked up a thing or two in terms of chemistry because they're a great pairing. And like I've reiterated before, I think we're going to see them over the course of this regular season as a defensive pair at some point, whether it be further in the preseason or maybe hopefully some point during the regular season, as I think that's going to be a good match going forward, especially if there's an injury on the back end, which, given that this is the Golden Knights, I wouldn't be so surprised if that happens. Same thing, I've got to tip my hat to Whitecloud with his 4 assists on the night. Clearly, his vision was off the charts, given that the majority of them were primary assists, and some of them were just absolute beauties. And that's kind of what you expect from an NHL regular. He's probably the number 3 defenseman on the team behind Martinez and Pietrangelo, and probably on the same footing with Theodore in terms of offensive and defensive production. Another player that played really well, obviously given up 1 goal and it was in garbage time, is Logan Thompson. I would have loved to have seen him get that shutout to make it 7-0, but when your team is up 6-0, you can't really be faulted when you give up a weird goal when your team kind of breaks down in front of you. So again, Logan Thompson, 1 goal through 4.5 periods this preseason. He's looking really solid, and on top of the fact that he looks sharp with his goalie gear, I'm just glad to see him playing well. He's really done a good job putting in his audition for the number 1 starting job. And finally, the group of players that I think played really, really well are the usual NHL players, the NHL depth players particularly. We got a lot of production from Amadio. Howden, despite not really getting on the score sheet, played well. Kolasar got a goal. And we're not sure where Stevenson's going to slot in the lineup, but given the depth charts I've been seeing floating around on the internet, it looks like he might be our 3rd-line center. So I guess that would lump him in as a depth player as well. So a good chunk of the goals, just over half of them, came from NHL day-to-day depth players, which is it's a good thing to see, given that these players are the ones that we're going to be looking for to pick up their production and continue to develop this season. The thing I find really positive is that they were able to score a lot of goals tonight, a lot of different ways. Whether it be Cotter Kolasar on a really good forecheck, or a really good passing play like Pahal to Cotter, or just some luck like Stevenson kicking it in the seventh, or for the seventh goal of the game, or chemistry akin to a lot of good chances, whether it be the Carlson Amadio chance, whether it be White Cloud to Carlson on the first shot of the game, and basically a lot of other chances that both scored and got saved were set up by strong chemistry. And the thing I can really be positive about is that we were able to score 7 goals tonight without ever compromising defensive structure. They barely had any shots from the middle of the ice, and the ones that they did were either from distance or Thompson was right on top of them and they hit him right in the chest. So it was a very positive game for the Golden Knights, and I can't really complain about it. I really hope that they're able to build on this, as this is one of those games where if this was the regular season, I would be screaming from the rooftops that they're going to go on and win the Stanley Cup. But it is the third game of a 7-game preseason exhibition schedule, so if they come out the next game and do that again, then we can consider it a trend. If they don't necessarily have to score 7, although 8 would be nice, but if they're able to be comprehensively better than their opponent like they were tonight, it's going to be a really, really good rest of the preseason, and hopefully that luck will be able to carry on into the regular season. So at the end of the night, Vegas 7, Colorado 1. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel if you want more of it, as I'm going to try and do this for every game of the coming season and hopefully future seasons going forward. So that being said, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.